Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metro Development Assessment Panel today. Declare the meeting open at 9:34 and acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to the elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices during the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. My name's Clayton Hine, I'm the presiding member for today's meeting, and with me I have Francesca Lafanti, the deputy presiding member, online Nima Premji, the specialist member, and Councillor Victor Coe here, and Councillor Liam Gobbett online. There are no apologies, no members listed as being on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Moving to part B of the agenda, I'm seeking a declaration of due consideration. Could members indicate that they are familiar with all the documentation contained within the agenda for Part B and Part B related information with a show of hands? Thank you. Good, thank you very much. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Coe.
So I have a proximity interest to the property. My primary work of address is at Royal Perth Hospital State Trauma Unit. I'm one of the trauma registrars. Okay, thank you. I accept that as being an interest which can be dealt with, and you can continue to participate in the meeting and vote. Are there any other declarations or disclosures of interest? No. No, thank you. We'll move to the item itself, item 5.1, the convenience store and car wash. We have a couple of presenters or number of presenters. Can I remind presenters that you have 3 minutes and we'll notify you when the 3 minutes is up. So we'll start with Catherine Jansen. I'd like to go to the mic.
Morning, thank you. So my name is Catherine Jansen. I live on Wellington Street at 123 Wellington Street. We love our life in East Perth. We love walking the city. We love walking the North Bridge. We love opening our apartment up to the beautiful breeze. My presentation will explain how the proposed convenience store will change the way my family and I enjoy our home, our lifestyle, and watching the gradual change from being a family-friendly urban neighbourhood. We looked very carefully to find an apartment suitable to live long-term, a neighbourhood to grow a family, and we're very happy with what we've found. In regards to noise, I don't believe that a 24-hour petrol station will benefit the residents of Wellington Street. In our apartment, 2 bedrooms face directly toward the proposed petrol station. I'm concerned that behaviour of people attracted to the petrol station, shouting and car noises will disrupt the sleep of everyone in the apartment. The City of Perth has put in great efforts, the beautiful playground at the park, improving security to manage the worst of East Perth's antisocial behaviour, and I feel that allowing this petrol station will be a big step backwards. Regarding health, our home is within 50 metres of the proposed petrol station. The Department of Health WA published an updated position paper on petrol station separation distances in 2024. The report acknowledged the 200-metre separation recommended by the EPA was a 20-year-old requirement. However, it didn't find there was zero risk. The 2024 position from the Department of Health is that 100-metre separation from residential homes is a more appropriate reduction of the health risks. We were looking to live in East Perth and raise a family. The City of Perth is making great strides to convince more young families to move to the city for the long term, including the East Perth Primary School, Bob Hawke Secondary School, a pool and rec centre at the Wacker, supermarkets and sporting complexes. The barriers to people looking at the city as a long-term home are being currently remedied one by one. I don't think it's appropriate or fair for this petrol station to come into our area and increase the risk that me or my family may form cancers or any future children will risk childhood leukemia for the benefit of commuters coming into the city from the suburbs. We liked the urban nature of our street. The new park at Wellington Square the city has built and saw this as part of East Perth as a place that was working to be more walking friendly and more family friendly. With us planning a family, this proposed petrol station is going to impact that. Recently, the state has forced several backward steps. The Armidale train line has made Wellington Street busier, the street parking has been removed, and 2 lanes encourage speeding and traffic has noticeably increased. We were so excited when we heard the petrol station was removed and demolished. It changed our mind about East Perth and we bought our apartment after this demolition. This new petrol station will change the way I see East Perth and the way my family sees East Perth, and forcing us to consider less sustainable, less urban options to live long term to raise a safe, happy and healthy family.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there questions from panel members of Catherine?
I have no questions.
No questions? Yes, Councillor Carr.
I'm good, thanks.
Good, thank you.
I'm okay, thank you, presiding member.
Move on to Daniel Jansen.
My name is Daniel Jansen. I am a resident of the City of Perth at 123 Wellington Street, next to this proposed site. I'm an urban and transport planner, and I happen to be employed by the PTA as the Senior Strategic Transport Planner. We have chosen an urban home. Our residential amenity is drawn from walking, public transport use, and a car-light lifestyle. I'm here because our written submission alone is not considered, we do not consider be able to communicate our concern from the proposed development. Firstly, I'd like to confirm if the City of Perth referred this matter to the WAPC inbox of PTA. Strategic risk to Wellington Street is quite high. Secondly, I'd like to correct some factual errors in the transport impact statement. The report noted 3 bus routes along Wellington Street. It's actually 8. There are 64 services at the peak. That's one every 42 seconds. The licensed capacity of these buses is 3,776 passengers. Now, for context, that is double the seats in the Ellenbrook line, the new government has just opened. The development is overcrowded. It will take very, very little for queuing on this development to extend into Wellington Street, disrupting services. And the DAP guarantee, there will be no major crashes, no minor crashes. 2 cars won't wait for a car wash. 4 cars won't wait for a coffee. A staff member won't call in sick. A staff member won't drop a coffee during service. A cheap fuel day, or the most likely one, a supplier accidentally sends a truck greater than 16.4 metres to the site. Any of these events is likely to happen on any given day, and the consequences will range from minutes of delay for 3,000 passengers in the peak hour that run through this corridor, through to full shutdown of Wellington Street. I'd also like to draw the DAP's attention to DAP matter 22/02317 from the 3rd of May 2023, a petrol station from the proponent on Angove Street, North Perth. This was refused in part due to health concerns raised by Dr. Hessam Razavi. The report, which I have here, is titled Proximity to Petrol Stations Linked to an Increased Risk of Adult and Childhood Cancers. The report establishes benzene as an established carcinogen and a long-term exposure risk. For residents within 50 metres, there's a 77% increased risk of all childhood cancers and a 2-fold risk of all cancers, despite the introduction of vapour recovery measures. This is not a nuisance deputation. I am pro-appropriate development. The residential is the existing land use in this matter. Health, residential amenities, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day is the priority. The proposal is a industrial highway use. I acknowledge there was once a petrol station on this site. However, that was introduced as East Perth was transitioning to an industrial area. Since that time, no industrial areas remain on Wellington Street. It has transitioned fully back into residential. My concerns, that's my 3 minutes. My concerns are to the impact to public transport operations and the long-term health impact to me and my neighbours. Thank you.
Any other questions of Daniel? Impairment?
Not at this juncture from me.
No. Nima?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Daniel.
Thank you very much.
We'll go to Jason Bowe. Jason.
My name's Jason Bowe. My address is at 1101 on 8 Adelaide Terrace in East Perth. So I will be speaking against this recommendation and this motion. I used to live on 105 Wellington Street during my uni years, and as part of my university years, I held a part-time job at Burswood. So I would often drive in and out of this area, especially late night hours. And the activities we witnessed then at the Caltex, the former Caltex, which was at this location, was noise late at night, antisocial behavior, fighting, begging in particular, and a lot of that had to do with tobacco. I am also, in my family, we have 2 convenience stores and a liquor store. So we hold 3 tobacco licenses. So we do see this stuff day to day. And as a service station, tobacco is one of the key sales, making up to sometimes 50% of the revenue of most of the location. So in terms of the safety risks, I can tell a personal story. In 2018, our convenience store in Mandurah, Greenfields, was held up by 3 teenagers with machetes. Now, my mum was on duty at the time with my auntie. She was assaulted with the hilt of the machete, and my auntie was slashed down her face from her left eye down to her right cheekbone, resulting in a 6-month-long facial reconstruction surgery and a scar that's basically there forever. Now, that's the sort of story you hear very often when it comes to places that sell tobacco. Last month, a Wanneroo service station was held up at 3 a.m. Similar thing, assault and basically cigarettes, money. That's the 2 things that are the most prevalent in the, I suppose, the underground trading. Cigarettes is used both as a bartering tool and general consumption. So for me, as a 24-hour operation convenience store in this location is wholly incompatible, especially with the new common grounds coming in as a homelessness facility. It is a major safety risk to the community to have a location where we're encouraging crime to come into a primarily residential neighborhood. I mean, not to mention there is a big playground, a school, thousands of residents and a hospital within 400 meters of this location. So from my perspective and my, I guess, professional experience in this sector, I think this is not a great idea, especially since it's a 24-hour operation and it's not compatible with the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Other questions of Jason?
Not from me, thank you.
No. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to Nick Hitting online.
Thank you, presiding member, and good morning, everybody. So Nick Hittingham Planning, applicant for the proposed convenience store and car wash development. The subject land at 141 Wellington Street, East Perth, was previously a Caltex service station which existed there for decades and was demolished to make way for an improved convenience store and service station development. This matter comes before you after being the subject of an application for review in the tribunal and after considerable amendments have been made to the proposal. The amendments have been made in response to a number of matters that have been previously raised by the city and the DAP, to the point where the city, including the city's design review panel, are now supportive of the project. The applicant's team has worked closely with the city, including the city architect, to develop a proposal that addresses the previous issues and presents a quality resulting outcome. The resubmitted proposal is supported with a range of supporting documentation, which is attached to the agenda. We've reviewed the city's comprehensive responsible authority report. We note the recommendation for approval, which we support. We've reviewed the conditions together with our client and confirmed that we're accepting of the conditions recommended. And we'd like to thank the city for its recommendation and commend officers for their work. We'd respectfully seek the DAP to adopt the recommendation for approval as set out in the RAR. We do note there has been Regulation 13 request for services, and we note the responses from the city. There are a couple of condition changes which have been suggested and responded to. We don't have any problems with those. Perhaps the only sort of question we had was condition 8. It was a request to change the hours of operation of the car wash. The car wash has been assessed as being compliant for 7 to 10 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and also on the Sunday to 10 p.m. I think there's a request now to change that to 7 p.m. maximum time frame. Don't understand the basis of that. If the DAP could and the city could comment on that, that would be good. Look, if that's the way it has to go, we would be okay with it. We'd prefer to have it as assessed in the acoustic report, but understand that the DAP can consider alternate arrangements. In response to a couple of the submissions that have been raised, in our view, look, this is a retail convenient outlet for the benefit of the local area. OTR is as much as providing retail convenience as it is about providing refueling and recharging facilities. Antisocial behaviour and human behaviour, look, it's something that comes up from time to time. The operational management and the design of this facility is aimed at mitigating those issues. In terms of acoustic compliance, as set out in my submission, the property will have a number of boundary barrier walls, which I've explained in my submission, to contain the facility and to ensure that amenity impacts are not received. Marty is online to answer any questions of an acoustic nature. In relation to traffic and generally other noise, they've all been fully assessed over a number of months. This application's been in the system for quite some time, probably close to 2 years now, through not only the city's processes, but also through the tribunal processes. So all of the issues that have been raised have been dealt with to the point where the city is now comfortable with the proposal and have recommended conditions. There are a number of conditions that deal with operations and they're accepted by us. So we believe that all the issues have been fully considered and that this panel is able to approve the application as recommended by the city. As mentioned, we've been working closely with the city architect and the design review panel to deal with the issues. And we've been tweaking things quite closely in terms of floor plan layouts, access locations, facade designs, operational requirements, roof plant, all those sorts of things, resulting in a proposal that's worthy of consideration. So we'd seek the DAP's approval here this morning. Happy to answer any questions. Andrew Casper from Peregrine Corporation's on the line, as well as Marty Wolpennies from Reverberate Consulting. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Questions of Nick from panel members? Councillor Coe.
Thanks, Nick, for your presentation. I've been looking through some of the concerns by the public. Can you share a little bit of information about this vapor recovery technology, particularly the health, if there's any health implications of this? Yeah, look, the facility will operate with the standard vapor recovery technology that's utilised on most service stations around the country. The facility has to go through a further approval process with dangerous goods licensing, which deals with a number of factors, including risk and air quality and everything like that. So they look at the bowser locations and the refueling locations where the tanker drops the fuel.
I'd like to point out also that from the original proposal that went to the DAP, we've relocated those activities further away from the residential areas as well. So there's additional distances from those locations to neighbouring properties. But in answer to your question, yeah, look, those issues are also reviewed at the subsequent stages as well. The city's assessed those particular amenity issues, referred them to relevant authorities, and they've come back with no objection. And the city has said in its report that those issues have been considered.
Just as a follow-up to Councillor's question, you say in your presentation information that using new technology in the fuel tanks and refueling bowsers. What's the new technology?
Oh, look, thank you for the question. It's comparing to the previous service station, which was there for decades. Each time you redevelop a service station, it comes with the latest technology. I don't know exact terminology, but they're far better than the previous ones that were in the ground. Double contained fuel tanks in the ground, all those sorts of things. So that's the technology that I'm talking about.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, Councillor Gobbett.
Thank you, Chair, and just for the public record, as requested, Councillor Gobbett from the City of Perth. To Nick, although I think it might be your other representative with you that might be able to address this question. You said that you'd received the Regulation 13 directions, so my question relates to that. In the responses provided to question H in Reg 13 direction, the city stated it is not known how much the measurement for the vacuum bay was adjusted with respect to the tonality. Can you please tell the panel how much you altered the decibel data?
If I could hand that one to Marty, who's our acoustic consultant, if presiding member is accepting of that.
Yes, by all means.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, thank you. Marty Warpenius, acoustical engineer. Councillor Gobbett, the vacuum bay adjustment according to the noise regulations for tonality is 5 decibels. We have also applied that 5 decibel adjustment to mechanical plant on the roof, to the reversing beepers of vehicles on site, and also to the tyre refill beepers. So anything that has a potential tone is captured, as is the car wash bay. But coming back to your question, the vacuum plant has a 5 decibel penalty adjustment.
And so with the data that's presented in the table, it's 1 decibel below the compliance requirement. So if you hadn't adjusted it, would it be non-compliant?
So the table you're referring to in particular, let me get that out. It's table 5, I would think. Is that correct? Vacuum, table 5, it says vacuum bay for the residential area A is 49 decibels, where the assigned level is 50. Is that your question?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it does refer to that. Sorry, I didn't mention that, but in question H, it does say page 9, table 5, yes.
Yes, okay. If the adjustment was not applied to that 49 would become 44. So the adjustment is like a penalty. You add it to the noise to reflect its impact rather than its actual noise level. So to answer your question, without the adjustment, that forecast 49 would be 44. So it would be significantly below the 50 requirement.
Okay, great. Thank you. This might be back to Nick then for another question. Under response J, the city was not able to give me an answer that addressed the question. How are you going to ensure compliance with the refrigeration to the delivery trucks being switched off when the vehicles are parked?
I'm just having a look at that. Look, in noise management plans, there's quite often adopted through condition a noise management plan that talks to how the trucks are being utilised. Even reverse beepers and things like that. The city can perhaps talk to how that how best to control that. I don't know if Marty has a view on that particular point either. Marty, do you have a view on that?
Yes, look, if I can just comment on that. We have this requirement on quite a few sites around Perth. So normally what happens is the delivery process, the service station proprietor engages a transport company, and through their contracts, they specify all of this. Then they make their drivers aware, and then they do monitor this as well. That is how I've seen it in quite a few other sites being performed.
Okay, and final question. Under response K in the pack, I'm trying to get a more clear picture about what you see as reasonably available equipment. And for comparison, there are apartment buildings in the city who wheel their rubbish bins out onto the street. They use brooms to sweep up. That's pretty labor intensive, but I imagine you're not going to be doing that kind of labor intensive low noise level kind of waste management. So what's your interpretation of reasonably available equipment for refuse collection?
That phrasing reasonably available, that's lifted straight out of the noise regulations itself. It has this exact clause in there for both the equipment and the activities. Now, reasonably available is a very legally laden term with case law, etc., etc. But my description of what I was intending by that phrase is anything that's ordinarily available or usually available. So the quietest equipment usually available and reasonably available.
Okay, so just for absolute clarity, you are talking the quietest available equipment. Okay, right. Thank you. No further questions, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to the trucks and beepers and things like that, your noise management plan only says that the reversing of trucks to be minimised to avoid that. Would it be better to put something in there which requires the owner-operator to only engage companies do that?
Look, as far as the reversing of vehicles, we've assessed the noise from beepers and they do comply with the noise regs. So that is acceptable on the site. I feel that by having to minimise the reversing and using broadband beepers where available, again, reasonably available, that reduces overall impact. So just to be clear, the site is compliant with normal reversing beepers. They could reverse around the site for extended periods and still meet the noise regs. But I feel that to minimise the overall impact of the entire site, then these are good steps to take.
Thank you. Any further questions of the presenters? Yes. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
No, okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to the officers now. Do you want to make a presentation or just take questions? Come on.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm happy to provide a brief summary of our assessment and then answer any questions. Craig Smith, the City Architect, is also available to answer any specific questions in relation to design. So my name is Julia Kingsbury. I'm the Manager of Development Approvals at the City of Perth. The proposal is a very detailed history dating back to November 2022, as summarised in the RAR. This RAR is in response to an invitation from the State Administrative Tribunal for the DAP to reconsider its February 24 decision, which was to refuse the proposed convenience store on the basis that the proposal was not considered suitable for reasons relating to the land use and in particular site planning and built form outcomes of the development. The applicant has submitted amended plans following extensive consultation with the department and the city via the SAP process. The amendments include reorganising the site planning to locate the control building to the front, to the street front, minimise the frontage and impact of the drive-through facility, improve legibility through the site and introduce more landscaping. They've also demonstrated in the design and also the management of the operation that the potential adverse impacts on the amenity of the locality can be minimised as much as possible. As detailed in the RER, the amended design provides a more suitable solution for the site in accordance with the principles of good design and the city's development requirements. The most significant amendment has been the relocation of the proposed control building to the Wellington and Hill Street intersection and the redesign of the Wellington Street elevation to include a shop front, openings and outdoor dining fronting the street. The drive-through has also been redesigned to minimise its frontage to the street and be surrounded by landscaping. Signage has also been scaled back to be more appropriate to the site and also to be more integrated more successfully into the design of the development. Therefore, the amended design is considered to be more appropriate for this inner city location and adequately address the DAP's reasons for refusal, which primarily related to context and character, streetscape activation and interaction, legibility, landscape and signage. The convenience store use itself has been the subject of most of the public objection to the proposal for reasons relating to amenity impacts, primarily noise and antisocial behaviour, traffic impacts, and also its compatibility with the existing and future character of the locality. In regards to the city's assessment, the proposed use is a contemplated use. It can be considered under our scheme. And the applicant submitted amended plans and revised reports to address a lot of the concerns that have been raised. This information demonstrates that potential noise impacts can be minimised through specific design measures, including the location of sound-absorbing barriers, location screening of plant and equipment, and the use of specific materials in the construction of the car wash and the vacuum bays. And specific operational measures, including reduced operating hours for the ancillary services and the management of delivery and services to the site. Also, the potential adverse impacts associated with gas emissions, odour and safety can be minimised through technology and operating measures associated with fuel deliveries and also the dispensing, including the vapour recovery system that was mentioned and the location of the canopy where the impact on any light spill will be minimal given the distance from openings of adjoining developments. The use has been considered by the city in regards to its compatibility with the locality. We note that the locality, specifically the site's sleeving Wellington Square and back towards the west and north of the site, includes a mix of residential and commercial uses. These zones are reflected under the scheme, being the residential and commercial zone and also the city centre zone. The use is not far from the East Perth town centre, which is focused around Hay Street, and the site is located on an entry route into the city from the north, being via Lord Street and Hill Street. The site was previously occupied by a convenience store until 2022. And the use will provide a convenience service to users and occupiers of the immediate locality as well as the broader city. And as mentioned before, the revised design is considered to be more compatible with the character of the area and its inner city location. As such, the amended proposal was considered to adequately respond to the DAP's reasons for refusal relating to impacts on amenity and the compatibility with the locality. So just in summary, the revised proposal is generally compliant with the requirements of City Planning Scheme number 2 and through the compliance with conditions of approval can demonstrate that any potential adverse impacts can be minimised and or effectively managed. So as such, our recommendation is that the application be approved subject to the conditions as indicated in the RAR.
Thanks, Joy.
Thank you.
Questions of Joy? It's Councillor Gobbett.
Thank you, Chair. Julia, under response K concerning the refuse collection, the words endeavour to use, is that not a bit of a toothless tiger? How's that going to be enforced?
Thank you, Councillor. I note the acoustic consultant's response in regards to it being a term that is reflected in legislation, but I suppose in taking compliance action against such a requirement, it may be challenging. I suppose as noted through the report and our review of it, the equipment that has been proposed does comply. And and so I suppose in regards to a true compliance against the noise regulations, it could comply. Whether it could still be a nuisance and potentially affect the amenity of the residents, that may come up, and we can certainly address it with the operator through their management of it. If the panel are concerned about the wording and the ability for the city to enforce such a requirement, it could consider amending the condition relating to the operational management plan to be more specific in terms of if it's associated with reversing beepers and the like.
Further questions? Nima?
Yes, thank you. To the city officers, throughout this process, which is for the last 2 years, how did the city go about assessing the health concerns that were expressed in the submissions? And in particular, did you address this particular development to any internal or external health authorities?
Thank you for the question. As you mentioned, this application has been ongoing for a number of years for various reasons. It was subject to an assessment originally, and obviously through the current process, a revised application has been assessed. The city's undertaken a thorough assessment at both stages. So initially sort of during 2023 primarily, and then again over the last few months. In regards to any referrals in relation to public health or safety, the city has internal environmental health officers that do and did review this proposal, and they reviewed it against health requirements, including the EPA guidelines. We also referred the application to the Department of Energy, Mines, Industry and Safety, DMIRS, in regards to, I suppose, noting a requirement in the future for the proponent to obtain a dangerous goods licence. And as detailed in our report, DMIRS advised that they were satisfied with the proposal. And we also referred it to the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, DFES, and similarly, they advised that they had no objection to the proposal. I suppose the health concerns and the risk concerns associated with such a development, we rely on the EPA guidelines being a prescribed planning document that can be considered under the deemed provisions in regards to matters to be considered. As noted in a number of cases, it's a dated document and hasn't been updated for a number of years, but it does provide some separation guides as well as then, I suppose, some avenues to reduce those separation distances, which again is reflected in some of the more contemporary reports that have been submitted with the submissions. In our response to the R13 request, we noted that the two documents, the position statement by the Department of Health, as well as the report prepared by the doctor that was mentioned, if they were considered, and they have been considered since they were received earlier in the week, they could be considered in response to being a submission under the deemed provisions. So we have given regard to them and appropriate weight, noting our scheme does permit this land use in this area. The applicant has demonstrated that amenity impacts and risk impacts can be minimised and will comply with relevant legislation relating to noise, dangerous goods, etc., and that the development itself will provide convenience and a service to the community as well as the broader city, which is generally in accordance with our planning framework for the city.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes.
I have a question. My question is specifically related to land use, and I refer to the RA, your CPS 2 and Basic Plan 14. And I suppose my question is that the information that I have here in the RA refers to the proposal as a convenience store and a car wash, noting that your scheme classifies and groups certain activities. Could you talk about the service station or the Bowser's use? And I don't see in the report any discussion about a land use of service station as part of this proposal? You refer to it in the RA of the previous use, and yet the scheme categorises as part of your group classification as a contemplated use in the mixed commercial. Can you talk about specifically, I suppose my question is, there's not a reference to it as a land use that's being requested as part of consideration, and therefore what do you classify the Bowsers as?
Thank you for the question. The way the city's current framework is compiled is that we consider land uses in groups, and in this instance, the specific use falls under the mixed commercial use group, and under our land use tables in City Planning Scheme number 2, those use groups have land use permissibilities, and that's where the contemplated or I suppose a more contemporary term of discretionary land use would apply. As per the definition of a convenience store, that does include, explicitly includes in the definition the ability to sell fuel. So the city scheme doesn't have a definition for service station exactly, but it's also not considered. The city's current planning scheme doesn't have a definition for service station.
CPS 2.
Correct. It's covered under a convenience store.
CPS 2, sorry, can I clarify this? I've got CPS 2. I downloaded WAPC's website, and on the use Schedule 4 definitions about a service station.
I think that the proposed development does meet the definition for convenience store. As Julia mentioned, it does include the sale of petrol, and it also this proposal is small enough to meet the floor space mentioned in the definition of convenience store.
Correct. Yes. Apologies. So it neatly fits into the definition of a convenience store by virtue of the goods that are offered for sale and the size of the proposal.
And so could I just clarify a little further, if I may? So given that the service station definition under your scheme incorporates a variety of other elements, is that the rationale for limiting it to just fuel by definition of convenience store?
I believe, sorry.
Sorry, I just want to clarify land use.
As in, I don't have the scheme in front of me, but from my memory is that the definition of service centre includes servicing of vehicles, and this proposal does not include that, so it wouldn't meet that definition.
So that's why you've classified it as convenience store and car wash, and not service station, because although it is contemplated in the mixed commercial provisions under your scheme, it would allow additional uses or additional elements that you're not support or they're not forming part of this development.
I would say in the first instance, it's able to meet the definition of a convenience store, so we would classify it as such. And then if you looked at an alternative definition, such as the service station one, I mean, this proposal actually doesn't meet that definition based on what it's proposing.
Thank you. Sorry, that was my specific question.
Further questions? Julia, in the R13 response, which is the second one, where C, there's an amend condition 10 to read, and it does that. Then D also says amended condition 10 to read. Is that a new condition suggesting?
No, apologies if it's confusing. I suppose we've responded to them in turn and dealt with them differently. They both require or suggest an amendment to condition 10, but they are considering slightly different issues, I believe. So C seeks clarification that the condition refers to the requirements as per the management plan. In the first sentence of our response, we do confirm that is what we are clarifying. We have included the following amended condition if the panel would like that, I suppose, to be specifically stated in the condition. So the change to the condition is really that it's to be operated in accordance with the requirements of the noise, environmental noise impact report and the noise management
So
plan.
D would replace the amended version of C?
Possibly, yes. So then D dealt with reducing the hours of the increasing the hours of the night mode operation. So applying, reducing the noise output. So we dealt with them as separate issues. So we dealt with them separately. So one was just seeking clarification. Just bear with me, I'll just find the original.
Which of those two are you recommending?
We accept the recommendations of the acoustic report. So we weren't recommending an increase in the hours in which the night mode operating.
Okay.
So we're not recommending that. We've provided a draft condition should the panel wish to amend it.
C.
So it's C if it's simply to provide greater, I suppose, certainty.
No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the officers?
I've got a follow-up specifically to your question. It is in relation to the response you provided. I am referring to condition 10C. The language of that report talks about to the satisfaction of the city. So it talks about development being operated in accordance with the requirements of the environmental noise impact report prepared by Reverberate, and goes on about a noise management plan to the satisfaction of the city. I suppose my question is, if there were modifications to that plan in other considerations that I've been part of, these enable an update or changes to your satisfaction as opposed to being only the one that is dated here. Is that what you're expecting or understanding in relation to this condition means? Typically, it would be or as updated to the satisfaction, something along those words.
Yes,
Limiting it just to those particular plan at that date, which would require essentially a application to change condition. That's what I'm trying to get at. Really.
Correct. Yes, I suppose the way we've worded the conditions is that the operation must comply with plans and reports that are being presented. Should there be modifications to that, then we would expect the applicant to lodge Clause 77 amendments with new documents for us to effectively replace the condition with new ones. We haven't included in this condition that it's compliant with those or as otherwise approved, because I suppose there's quite stringent and strict management requirements that we believe need to be enforced to assist with protecting the amenity of the locality, that we would really want to see that and consider that in detail should any changes be proposed.
Thank you. Julia, and this might be one for Craig. Jason Bowe made reference to antisocial behaviour, in fact, all the presenters have. I note in this design there's a sort of a seating area on the Wellington Street frontage. And I like the idea, but given what goes on sometimes in the early hours of the morning or late at night, this looks like a pretty good spot for the down and outs. I apologise for that, but for people who are homeless to find a nice dry spot, is that possibility or something that can be managed?
Craig can help speak to it. I suppose my comment would be that, as in, I suppose through our assessment and through consultation with the proponent, we looked at this introducing such an element, and we raised and we all shared similar concerns. I suppose we looked to how this precinct will develop in the future. It will be part of a residential neighbourhood and a mixed-use environment, and we're hoping for some significant uplift in activity in the area. So in the future, we're hopeful that any antisocial behaviour maybe will be minimised. In incorporating it, we worked closely with the proponent's architect to ensure then that there were sightlines available from the sales or the point of sales. And that was quite critical for their own operation, that the office or the staff member at the point of sales had surveillance over the canopy and the other operations, but we also were keen for them to have it over that area so that it could be monitored. Obviously, in their operational management plan, they talked about CCTV and other security. The wall towards the street, we asked them to keep that quite low, so it's also got some passive surveillance. So I suppose we looked at what design principles we could ensure were incorporated to ensure that it could be successful as possible, appreciating that it will require some management.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything to add, Craig?
In revising the plan, we did look at how the management would look to cover virtually the entire site from the locations within the building. So this is sort of there's a built-in observation control system, if you like. In particular, we wanted the northern face to be glazed as opposed to how it started off, and that was revised. So there's a clear line of sight from control to those outdoor seating areas. And if and perhaps when unacceptable behaviour occurs, they've got the capacity to shut down and report so that they don't do the intervention. And that's true of the whole site. Between the manager's office and the sales area, you can see virtually everything, including the access to the toilet within all of the sales area and all of the entrances and exits from and the Bowsers and looking back towards the car wash and whatever. So that there's a lot of thought went into that, both from the proponent's side and from our side, as to how both the interface with the street could be improved, but you still maintain those control items that were required by the proponent.
Thank you. Further questions? No? All right. Thank you very much to the presenters, to the officers. We'll move to the item. There is a recommendation for approval with conditions. I'm seeking a mover and a seconder for the published recommendation at this stage. Is there a mover for that? Thank you, Fran. Is there a seconder? Lynn, thank you.
Thank you. Having given due consideration to submissions, the content of the presentations today, the opposite proposal. As you have seen in today's meeting, I had particular concerns regarding land use, and I thank the city officers for explaining it and clarifying that there is a considered decision about the classification to limit the type of activities to ensure they are appropriate within the context of the area. I note that the uses that are being requested are uses that can be contemplated for the site, and I also am aware that the previous occupation of the site was for a service station in a different configuration. The design of the proposal, and thank you for those comments in relation to design, I think is a good design for its location and for its use. The incorporation of a building at the corner, at first I was unsure as to whether or not that would be a good outcome. However, seeing this plan and the information that we have provided, I think it is an exceptional design for the range of uses that are on that site, and the incorporation of a building faces the corner and interacts with both of those streets, both with in its design, its materiality, the use of landscape. I also like that signage is integrated into it, but it is not so obtrusive, and it does in fact operate and presents to the street as a positive building. I'm also pleased to hear about the controls that you have in place to manage externalities, and I do appreciate that some of those externalities, particularly in relation to elements and concerns around antisocial behaviour, are a complex matter and responsibilities of a variety of agencies involved. The information that I have presented here, particularly in relation to amenity impacts, I'm comfortable that the design incorporating barrier walls and other controls is appropriate to mitigate those actions. And I note that there are obligations on this approval from the applicant to obtain additional approvals from various agencies, particularly DEMAs in relation to the elements of the proposal, that they will also require assessment separate to the planning process. I did agonise a little bit about the concerns that have been raised in relation to the concerns raised by the submitters in relation to the information. However, I am comfortable that based on the scale of the proposal, the material that I have presented, particularly in relation to the comments relating to DEMAs and the controls of the other agency, as well as the technologies on the site, and the previous use of this site, that the proposal in terms of both its land use is appropriately addressed. I am not a health professional and I am not going to analyse the documents that have been provided. I have read through all of those, including the health position statement of 2024, and note that these are ongoing discussions between various agencies that intersect with the planning framework, and that on the material we have in front of us, I think the use is appropriate. I note that there are 6 bowsers here with the auto wash elements towards the rear and obviously the building towards the facade. So overall, I think the design and the land use has been explained, and I'm satisfied that it is appropriate in the context of this site.
Thank you. Emma, a seconder.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. And yes, I concur with all the comments made so far. I would like to add that the applicant has addressed the original reasons for refusal, and in particular the resiting of the control building. Overall, compared to the initial proposal that was put on that site, it is a better outcome. It has been given due consideration to all the concerns and all the risks. So I think that today's discussion has highlighted that the city and the applicant have gone through all the risks that have been associated with a potential development such as a fuel station, and have addressed them adequately. So hereby I support the decision to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the recommendation?
All right, thanks, guys. I feel like I've seen this application before about a bit under a year ago, and the design has definitely improved. I am actually a health professional working as both a GP as well as a trauma registrar. And I've seen patients before. I'm thinking back a few years ago, I've had a patient that was complaining of dizziness and headaches, and we could never figure out what was wrong with them. Out of the blue, I suggested she doesn't actually stay in her house and stay with her family. And God behold, her dizziness and headaches improved after a few weeks. And we found out it was the air quality inside her apartment that was actually really poor. Now, she didn't live next to a service station. We found another source for the problem with the air quality. And I feel like I can't ignore the health department's actual recommendation. The health department, I've actually jumped on their website and had a look at what this is about. And it's all about planning and land use. And it feels like the health department is shouting into the void, and both DFES and the Department of Mining and Resources are just not talking to each other. The vapor recovery technology, I actually went and looked that up. It's been around for about 50 years. And the studies that were mentioned in this health department's report, they are all within 50 years. They're actually within the last 30 years. And when you have one study saying that it's related to cancers, all right, that might be a coincidence. But when you have 9 studies saying that, it might actually be a relationship. So in saying that, it's based on health grounds. And I am aware I'm a health professional. I am biased because of that. And I'm aware of my biases. As a planning scheme, and as an architect, as a design, as a land use, what it looks like actually is actually quite nice. But in terms of now that area has more residents living there, I'm going to have to say no to this.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Gobbett.
Thank you, Chair. like the speaker before me, I have very real conflict in approaching how I considered this report, and I think the 26 odd questions that I posed back to the department in seeking to understand how this can be considered compliant, and the reasons that have been provided back have given the revised application an enhanced ability to meet the requirements of the city. But I'm conflicted in that less than a year ago, the city and the council resolved unanimously to declare this an X use on this site. So it's challenging because we need to consider the application against the current planning framework, which says that this is a contemplated use. I think it would be a very mischievous thing for the panel to vote against this based solely on the land use, even though the concerns that have been raised are entirely valid. So it's a reluctant yes, but with some conditions that I would like to propose. And I thank the city for preparing those amended conditions. So, Chair, with that, I'd like to move the amended conditions A, B, not C, D, and E on the Regulation 13 that has been provided. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I'll seek well, if you want to deal with those separately, I think we'll deal with those separately, Councillor. So let's start with A. Councillor Gobbett has moved that condition 18 to read, and it's in the documentation there. Is there a seconder for that? I'm happy to second that, Councillor. And did you want to speak? Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just to clarify the intent of the condition, I think with the applicant having been amenable to that, it just makes sense to make sure that there's clarity in that condition.
Yes, I certainly agree as seconder to that. Are there other speakers for that amendment? No, okay, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? Against? It's carried 4-1. Councillor Gobbett, B.
Yes. Again, just to align with the timing in the...
Sorry, I'll seek a seconder for that first of all. I beg your pardon. Is there a seconder for that? I'll second that. Okay, over to you, Councillor Gobbett.
Thank you, Chair, and I note the concern of the applicant as to seeking justification for that. It was to align with the ordinary hours that an adjacent resident might be considered or would consider reasonable, and submitting that plan to the satisfaction of the city.
Yes, and I'm also supportive of that change to those hours. So, is there or are there speakers on this amendment?
Just need some clarification. So we're changing the hours, operating hours?
Operating hours of the car wash and vacuum facilities. Sorry, have you got that?
I'm looking for it now, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
What page is it on?
That's in response to the second R13.
Oh, that one.
So we'll read, a revised operational management plan is to be submitted to the city for approval, including the restriction of the use of the car wash and vacuum facilities to between 7 AM to 7 PM on Monday to Saturday, and between 9 AM and to 7 PM on Sunday, with the approved plan being implemented by the operator proprietor on an ongoing basis to the satisfaction of the city. So are there any further speakers on that one? Okay.
Did you want us to share them on the screen? So we're going
That's probably a great idea.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'll speak to it.
Yes, Fran.
I understand with applicants coming in relation to this in terms of hours of operation. However, I'm actually comfortable on a revised or this amendment, and I think that there is opportunity that that it shows the operation or the best controls for the operations in terms of amenity impacts, particularly late in the evening. There is always avenues for applicants to have these matters reconsidered, provided a decent justification that supports that. I am intrigued in terms of the number of people who would in fact be using those facilities much later into the evening, and the extent to which the noise impacts the neighbouring property. So I'm comfortable that the condition as amended is being sought.
Thank you. Any further speakers on that amendment? Councillor Gobbett, did you want to wind up the debate on that amendment?
Thank you, Chair.
I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Gobbett, I think was D next, was it?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Councillor Gobbett's moved in 10 to read, and it's now on the screen there. Is there a seconder for that amended condition? Yes, Fran, thank you. All right, Councillor Gobbett.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And aligned to the reasoning provided in amended condition 8, also to align with a more reasonable operating hours to be amenable to the directly adjacent residents. And again, to be provided to the satisfaction of the city.
Okay, thank you. Francesca, second.
I'm comfortable with the additional controls in terms of managing noise. I note the applicant's comments in relation to the facility, and I'm satisfied that they can suitably ensure they comply with those requirements in the functioning operation of the site.
Thank you. Further speakers on that amendment? No? Okay. There's nobody speaking against it. I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Gobbett, did you say E as well?
Yeah, sorry, that was my error, Chair. There is no amended condition E. Apologies.
Thank you. Okay then. Councillor Gobbett, still with you with the primary motion now as amended.
Thank you, Chair. Just to wrap up, again, when I considered the reasonings, how we might approve, refuse or approve with conditions, I fall back to the technical assessment within the officer's report, and we can only consider a development application based on the current planning framework. It's disappointing that the Planning Commission haven't advertised the new planning scheme, because it is a resolved position of the council that this would be an X-use on this site. So it is a very reluctant way. It's reluctant of me, but I can only approve this as the applicant has considered and responded to the requests that have been made of them. If we were to refuse this application, it would be a very mischievous act. The SAT, I fear, would not look kindly on the decision of the DAP to refuse this application on any basis, because the technical assessment says that it is compliant in every way, with the exception of, I think it was the bike rack, but that can be very easily resolved. So on that basis, I hear the concerns of the residents. I have attempted, and thank the panel for their agreement with the amendments, but I have attempted to ease the concerns and to ensure that this development, if it goes ahead, will be a little bit more of an easy neighbour. Just in closing, I would highly encourage this development not to proceed if I could. I would very much like to see the city's new scheme as it's resolved for there to be residential development on this site, but I accept that we can't direct landowners for how they develop their site. But it is my express wish and that of the resolved position of the council that this is residential land use in the future. So, as I said, a reluctant yes, and with that, I'll finish. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gobbett. I too support the proposal based on the fact that it does or can be approved and does fit the current planning framework. I, to some extent, agree with Councillor Gobbett that there are issues there that are outside our control, and hopefully they will be addressed when it goes to the Department of Mines. But our job is to deal with this within the planning framework that we've got before us. The applicant has responded to the initial concerns and we organise the development on the site to minimise impact. In terms of a convenience store and development itself, I think it's quite well designed for its location in that site. But I think there are other issues that I acknowledge that the community are concerned about. Hopefully the noise management plan and the amendments and the operational management plan will mean this site, this application, this use operates with minimal impact. And I don't think any of us could ever give an assurance that there won't be any antisocial behaviour. This is the nature of inner city locations sometimes, and we can't say that will never happen. The health issues that have been raised, I think they will hopefully be appropriately dealt with through the department. There's already been some acknowledgement by the department that this is satisfactory, so I have to be guided by those agencies because I don't have that expertise. So having said that, I support the proposal or the recommendation as amended. Back to Francesca as the mover to wind up the debate.
Thank you. I make a couple of concluding remarks. I have taken on due consideration the matters that have been raised by the other presenters. In terms of health considerations, from my perspective, I'm satisfied that based on the material we have and the jurisdiction we have, that it's appropriate. I do note that the other agencies such as DEMA's, Department of Health and EPA are matters and have approval processes beyond the planning process, and they are charged with that through various pieces of legislation. And over time, I would expect that there is a combining of that material in a format that will dovetail nicely into the planning framework and the planning legislation. From my perspective, there are some matters that sit beyond the planning legislation, and I'm satisfied based on the material that we've got that DEMA's and their processes, with the authority they have, will provide a determination on it. I suppose from my other perspective, I will make a comment on land use. It was something I raised earlier, and I suppose based on the material that was provided at today's meeting, and thank you to the officers, I'm not confident that the new scheme, LPS 3, and I don't have a copy of it, I am referring to the material that is contained in the RA that talks about in LPS 3, the site would be, the use would be to Hemida Service Station, and it's detailed here, and it would be an X use. I respectfully have some questions about that, particularly in the context of the comments today that highlighted that this was appropriately classified as a convenience store by definition, as the convenience store definition includes petrol services. And this definition that I am reading in the RA does talk about elements of carrying out minor repairs, a matter that was specifically acknowledged in today's discussion that addressed the classification of the land. And on the basis of the classification of the land fitting within CPS 2 land use of convenience store, it is a use that I would suspect could continue even within LPS 3. And I say that with a qualifier that I haven't seen the use classifications of LPS 3, but as I say, I made those comments in the context of the commentary that's been provided today around how the site was classified. And for that reason, I do think it is an appropriate land use given the information and material we've been provided. The design of the proposal is a good design in its location, focusing on the street. And as I've already indicated, there are a number of matters that sit beyond the planning legislation, and they will continue to dovetail in. I will also make a comment about antisocial behaviour, and whilst it is, there's been some concerns raised, and I do not doubt the concerns of the presenters, and I understand the anxiety that may create, and for you. I note that it's a very complex challenge and it's a responsibility across many agencies, and the planning process doesn't hold the answers for some of those matters. We have some limitations in relation to those. I'm comfortable that the design has been created and has been assessed as being an optimum design in relation to good visibility to minimise elements of antisocial behaviour. There is no design that I'm aware of that can prevent it. But I think on this particular one, it is a good design.
Thank you. That winds up the debate. I'll now put the motion as amended. All in favour? Against? That's carried 4-1. Thank you. Moving on to part D, other business, list of SAT applications there. I'll close the meeting at 10:49. Thank you.